Well, welcome everyone to the perfect pair, how LeanLaw and QuickBooks Online Advance can help your mid-sized law firm. And we're really excited about today's discussion. To kind of set the stage a little bit before we introduce everyone and get into questions, sometimes 1 + 1 can equal 3 or even 4. Now, that's what we think about this combination of QuickBooks Online Advanced and LeanLaw, especially when it comes to mid-sized law firms. We're going to talk a little bit today about how putting together QuickBooks Online Advanced, the world's lead cloud-based accounting platform, and one that particularly addresses small to mid-size firms with LeanLaw, which then incorporates a tightly integrated timekeeping, invoicing, reporting specific to the legal space, really creates that synergy that when you add these two softwares together, we're really excited to showcase today exactly the advantages, the workflows, how this makes it better for law firms. But let's go ahead. I'll introduce myself and then we'll introduce Gary. My name is Matt. I'll be your host today. I've worked with QuickBooks over 20 years, and I'm currently working with our partners. We represent our partners alongside QBO. And again, as we're mentioning in this webinar today, how the two can really partner up to provide you a really good solution and get you further into industry-specific, compliance-specific workflows and really try to help automate and save you time. So again, very excited about this interview today. And maybe, Gary, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Thanks, Matt. My name's Gary Allen. I'm a 35-year practicing lawyer and the founder of LeanLaw. When I was just 2 years out of law school, the firm I was working for imploded. And then just a couple years later at a different firm, it happened again. And both of those blow-ups could have been avoided because they were caused by bad business practices in those law firms of various kinds. So that really created a passion in me to make law firms and help law firms become better businesses. And that's why I started LeanLaw. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this creative solution we've made with QuickBooks to help you improve your law firm's finances.
Excellent. Well, and we're looking forward to hearing that story. It sounds like you have a bird's eye view, if you will. So excited to hear how we can incorporate that today. But we made a bold claim in the title of this fireside chat here, which is the combination of QuickBooks Online Advanced and LeanLaw can transform your law firm. Can you tell us a little bit more, Gary, what that means?
Yeah, to me, that has a very specific meaning. A law firm is transformed when it becomes a modern, efficient business. And sometimes that's about making more money, but more often it's about people spending more time with their families, contributing more to their communities, or providing their services more cost effectively. The legal profession needs all of those things.
Well, and a little bit further, what is the bar? When we talk about kind of transforming or helping a law firm, grow and make it easier, kind of what is that bar? What kind of key metrics? What are law firms looking for to see the value out of this transformation journey?
Thanks, Matt. Can you see the little chart on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So this has a very specific meaning to me. And I hope people are somewhat familiar with these metrics. I'll explain them a bit. So when I say a law firm is transformed, it means that the utilization, the amount of time that is the capacity of the law firm versus the amount of time that's actually used for billable time is over 95%. The realization, how much of that time that is used is billed, should also be above 95%. And the collection of those fees should be over 95%. So, and then overhead as a percentage of revenue should be less than 25%. So for a simple example, that means if you're a lawyer and you have a capacity to bill $500,000 a year, you should have revenue of around 450,000 and income before taxes of a little more than 300,000. So in my experience, that correlates with happy lawyers and happy law firms. And one note about utilization. Utilization doesn't mean that every minute of your day is spent billing. This is for you as a lawyer to make a deliberate choice about how much time you want to spend on your clients, and then setting that as your capacity and meeting that goal.
Well, these stats are really impressive. I think any business could benefit for this, but especially see why this is important for law firms. So thank you for sharing those with us, Gary. Now that leads us nicely into our next question. Is it just you plug in the software and all of a sudden these metrics all appear, or achieving these results? Kind of tell us a little bit more about what's involved in adopting the software and getting these results.
Sure. I wish it was as easy as you just adopt new software and then your life is changed. I think most of us who've used software realize that's not how it works. But it's hard to imagine reaching the efficiency that you need without automated workflows, which requires tightly integrated software. So beyond software, let me just talk for a second about the elements that make up a modern, efficient law firm so our listeners have some context. Number one is the right culture in the law firm. One way or another, accountability needs to be built in so the lawyers self-manage. Otherwise, it's too cumbersome and bureaucratic and top-down. And we'll talk more about what that means if you're interested. The second thing is you need the right business model and the right compensation system. Those are essential. So a production-based compensation, which creates accountability, you only get paid for what you produce, seems to be the most successful. And to do that, you need compensation reporting like a software like LeanLaw has. So there's some of that connection. Then I'm going to say low overhead one more time. So overhead as a percentage of revenue optimally should be in the range of 25%. That's not easy to achieve and requires a lot of changes how firms operate in many cases. For an average law firm, that's 50% today. So there's a huge amount of money to be gained by being more efficient on how you spend that overhead. And so if you want to know more about law firm transformation, I've written an ebook or I'm writing an ebook in story form this spring. So hopefully it's fun to read and it gives you important information about how to change your firm and how to transform it. It's written specifically for law firm managers. So I hope you'll sign up for this, and we'll be starting to release the chapters shortly.
Well, we appreciate you putting together those words of wisdom, Gary. It's and also I appreciate you being transparent here. It's not just about rolling out software. We need a playbook. How do we support that software internally? Like you said, with the culture, the business model, and certain KPIs to look at and work towards. So we appreciate that, and looking forward to your ebook as well. But to get us into our next question, I'd like to learn a little bit more, and I'm sure our listeners today would like to learn a little bit more about how QuickBooks Online Advanced plus LeanLaw can help businesses out. And let's kind of get started with who would the kind of ideal business or ideal customer in the law space or the firm space, what would they look like? How would you describe them?
Right. For LeanLaw, our ideal customer is a small to mid-sized law firm, which to us means 10 to 100 employees, and they fall broadly into two categories. One, they've already decided to use QuickBooks Online, and they're looking for an application to customize QuickBooks for law firms. And we think that we do that better than anybody else. And then secondly, they're moving off of a legacy or on-premise on-premise or server-based tool like PC Law, Timeslips, or Juris. And more than that, there are firms that want to modernize how they operate, be more nimble, more efficient, and more profitable. So they've got a hunger for this transformation, and that makes them exciting to work for and a really good fit for what we do.
And yeah, let's dig into that a little bit more with this next question. Let's say I'm the operator or managing partner of a mid-sized law firm. Um, I've realized I need to make this change. I'm ready for a new accounting software and billing system. What are some of the additional things I need to think about apart from just the feature sets or workflows? What's kind of the full picture I want to take into account as I look for this new system?
All right, thanks, Matt. Yeah, that's important to think about because it's a journey, and that you need to think of it in those terms. So the big considerations are as follows, and we can get into how QuickBooks plus LeanLaw address them as we talk specifically about the jobs the firm needs to do. But number one is access. In this world, you want to be able to check out a report when you're at home on the weekend, or you need to send out an invoice. Can the lawyers enter time in court or on the road? You want that anywhere access. On-premise is just the past, and in the cloud is the future. So make sure you're headed in that direction. You may be coming off of on-premise or server-based, but your next generation software, which you will hopefully use for a decade or more, needs to be in the cloud. Secondly, how hard is it going to be to use? And you should think about this for all of your users, not just the operators, not just the lawyers, but everybody in the firm who touches the software. Are they going to be able to learn what they need to do easily? Then the next thing is, can you get help with the system? I'm speaking specifically about accounting, the accounting part of this, because that's the hardest service to source for this type of software. You find somebody who's familiar with this system and with law firms. So that can be interesting, especially if in a smaller market, to find the right people. And then, is it going to connect with the other software I use? Now, this is really important between your accounting and your billing, and that's kind of the magic of the QuickBooks and LeanLaw integration. But also think about things like payroll, accounts payable, expense management, collection, those things you're used to doing on the side manually. That doesn't have to be anymore. Can you put all of those into one integrated platform? And then finally, and this is probably people's biggest fear, is how hard is it going to be to transition, especially to get your data moved over? And that's something you want a good answer from your vendor and a really clear program to get you onboarded.
But let's talk a little bit more. This is getting exciting, but I want to continue to dig a little bit more into the LeanLaw side of things.
Sure.
You can definitely see all the different ways this could help out a law firm, but specifically talking about timekeeping, invoicing, payments, those are some of the really big workhorses, if you will, for mid-sized law firms. And a lot of law firms that we've heard from struggle a bit with automating these particular workflows, getting bills paid, making them easier to address and handle. I like what you said earlier about it kind of being almost its separate side gig and things they do outside of their current packages. So how can QuickBooks Online Advanced and LeanLaw help handle these?
Thanks, Matt. A modern billing engine is the foundation of a modern law business. So after all, that's how you get paid. So it should not be an afterthought. It needs to be an asset that strengthens the trust and alignment between the firm and its clients, all the way from engagement to closure. Now, this is a different way of thinking about your billing, and I want to emphasize it for just a second, that we are talking about using your billing as a way to improve the trusted relationship that you have as a law firm between the lawyers and the firm and the clients. It's about aligning expectations about what things are going to cost and how they're going to get paid. And you know, I've had struggles in my own practice with this, so I completely understand this. And at LeanLaw, we really want to be focused on trying to make that as good as possible for the law firm. So there are three critical aspects in this workflow. One is describing the services performed. That's timekeeping, in fixed fees, maybe leads billing. You know, how do you describe what you're doing for your client? Second is invoicing it, and third is getting it paid. So let me share my screen, and I will show you some of this. Excuse me for 1 second. And we'll pull this up.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. We're excited to see it.
Okay, so do you see LeanLaw on the screen now? Okay, so what we're looking at here is LeanLaw's bulk entry timekeeping page. So as you can see, there are a bunch of entries on here already. And this is where a lot of, you know, if you have a lot to do in terms of timekeeping, this is where you go. And let me just back up for a second to say the secret to timekeeping is that you understand lawyers. And if there are 4 different choices for how you do things, lawyers are going to want 5. So you have to have flexibility in your timekeeping. So this is one of the ways we found people like to input time. And sometimes it's not always the lawyers. Well, often it's not the lawyers. So somebody will have a spreadsheet that's been given to them, or even notes on a pad. And so the staff member is inputting here, and this makes it easy to do that. So if I hit create a time entry, I can pick out a client and a matter and write a description. It gives me a bunch of automated choices based on things that have been put in, or you can just type it in. If you need notes, you can do that. Is it billable? And then you put in the amount of time. Let's make this one an hour. And you create an entry. In a few seconds, that's done. And you may have dozens of those to put in. If you're doing this right, you should be inputting your time as you go, because otherwise you're going to forget a lot of it. And we want to make sure there are easy ways to do that. So that's one way to keep time on LeanLaw. Another way is, this is something I really liked, and I fought for this feature because when I was a young lawyer, we would keep time on a day timer. So it looked like a calendar. So if you want to use that method, and this helps you to spot gaps in your day, like, oh, what did I do between 8 and 9? Well, let's see. I remember I was talking to somebody. I was having a conversation with Matt. I should be able to bill him for that, shouldn't I? So I'm going to just input a little time into a matter here. Again, I've got a snippet, so I can just talk about investigate and study QBO. Call that an hour, because that's how much I blocked out there, and I can save that entry. So just like that, we're filling in the day. Now, a lot of lawyers like timers, so you can just start a timer here, and it'll start keeping time. And when you're done, you can fill in what that was for, or at any point in the process, just to say, okay, what was that? That was a telephone conversation with client. Fill in the client and matter. And when you turn this off, we can pause it, or we can save it and say, oh, we're done. That was a quick one. And it loads up the time entry. and you can save it. So that also, that one doesn't appear on the calendar because it doesn't have the specific times associated with it, but you can include that. So in any case, you've got all of those ways to keep time on your browser. Then there is also a desktop tracker that you can use and a mobile app. So every way you want to keep time, you've got it in LeanLaw. So that's time entry. And that's, that's kind of normal for our industry, what we just showed you. Now we move to invoicing, where and this is where, a mid-sized firm has different needs than than smaller firms, because your, invoicing page, in this case, your what's called the ready to bill page, has a whole bunch of matters on it. You might be billing 500 or 1,000 invoices every month. So you need really good bulk features for that. And that's what this allows you to do. And you need a workflow. So LeanLaw accommodates a number of workflows. For example, this is one where you have a tab called Ready to Bill. When this is where all the time, and if you've inputted expenses, which is this tab, they go right here. That appears on this page. So it's ready to look to make it into a bill. Then you can make it into a, if a lot of firms want to have that review of the time and so on before they go into a draft format. And this creates all of the invoice drafts. And we've got a whole different set here. And then once you can then approve the drafts and then make them into invoices, send them to QuickBooks, and they get sent out. So let's just walk through that process for a second with some time, just to show people how that works. So let's just work on this one to make this easy. And over here it says, one click, we can create a draft invoice. Or here, if we want to review of the time entries, let's look at that. So it's like, okay, now we've got a little bit of billable time. If I wanted to edit this, I could do that. And if I needed to add more time or save, that happens there. And we go, okay, that looks good. I'm going to prepare the invoice. And now we have a draft invoice to look at, and we officially create it that way. And you can do that one by one, or you can do that with a bulk function like this, and approve all of those drafts at once, which is how, one of those time-saving actions. Now we can go to the drafts, and we can either go through another step of approval, and just for the sake of time, let's say this is the one we want to work on. And we're going to say, okay, I've already looked at that. I know what it says. I can view it. I can print it. I can approve it. And I can approve and send it to QuickBooks. So now we have just created an invoice in QuickBooks using this. So now we're taking advantage of some of that power that QuickBooks has on the invoicing side, and that integration with the accounting, because that invoice is now in your AR and all of that, the things that QuickBooks does. So now I want to manage those invoices. And this is one that I just had sent. So, okay, I've got an invoice sitting in QuickBooks with $450 in time and $5,000 in trust. What do I want to do with that? I don't need to have it paid because I've got money in trust. So I'm going to mark that. And what I can do here is just pay from trust. and it knows the amount of the invoice, and it's just, okay, let's pay it. So now that invoice has been paid. The trust has been adjusted. This will adjust itself shortly, but it fully automates that process. So let's try one that doesn't have trust and show. Now we can show the payment side of this. So that's one way to pay an invoice, is to pay it out of the balance in the trust account, which we've already created. Now let's take another one where we look at this invoice, and okay, we owe $8,700 on this. And so I'm going to email that to the client. And so this is, since we have a trust set up, we're using LeanLaw's payment system. If you don't have trust, you can use QuickBooks payment system if you prefer. But this is what happens if it goes through LeanLaw's system. So I've been talking quite a while here, Matt. Do you have any questions as I'm speaking?
No, I just, like I said, I really like the flexibility, the 4 different time tracking methods. I think you hit the nail on the head. As any business gets bigger, but especially law firms, doing things in bulk is critical. Um, and then the ability to bill out correctly, or take payment correctly. Let me say it more accurately, either from the funds on hand in the trust or to request more funds. It sounds like all the workflows have been covered, which is really exciting, because while you can do a few of these things in QuickBooks Online, like you mentioned, there are some industry specific or compliance specific workflows, especially like this one we're talking about now with payments, where it becomes a little bit more difficult, more steps. It doesn't send the funds to the right place on the chart of accounts, et cetera, on the operating account. So yeah, go ahead, continue, please. I'd love to see how, if we don't have trust funds for a client, how we reach out and get those funds from them.
Right. Right. And I will say that one of the things that really inspired us early on was we really liked the way QuickBooks would send somebody an email and there was a big button on it that just said, pay now. It's like, yes, make it easy to pay the bill. And we have emulated that with our system. What we found is, and this is a feature that's just coming out now, is that people want to be able to configure those emails on a client by client basis. They might want to add a note like, oh, well, we won your summary judgment motion, or, this is what's happening in your case. Good to see you at the country club. And so when you go to email an invoice, you now have a fully configurable email here with a nice template that we provide. And then it allows you to say, okay, is there a balance on this client beyond the invoice? Let's add a full balance payment link, or a link to just pay the invoice amount. We're trying to make these links really smart so it knows what to do with the accounting and in QuickBooks. So we now say, okay, this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and send this to the client.
Yeah, and I think it really highlights those themes, Gary, of automation and efficiency. Why send out 2 or 3 separate invoices when you can hit a button and pull it all together? Or if you need to send out a very specific invoice, I like how you've incorporated that right into the flow. That's
right. And if you are comfortable, what all of your clients want to see in their emails, or if you use the same template for everybody, you can just mark all of these like so and send those emails out in bulk. It'll still have the customizable fields, so it will feel as if it were addressed specifically to that client, which it is. But you can also do them one by one and add your own custom notes. And, that's part of that alignment and building trust with the client that a lot of our clients like. So So that's how that works. Now let's see what that did. So let's see if I got an email over here. Here we go. So here's the email that we just sent, comes to the client, and it has a pay button. There's only one invoice, so there's no need for a pay balance link. It includes the invoice, so you can take a look at the invoice that way. It has leads, and let me explain leads, and I should have mentioned this in the timekeeping section, which is if you work with insurance companies or large corporations, a lot of times they require that you submit your bill in leads format, which allows it to be computer analyzed for, the appropriateness of the fees. So we automatically produce those leads text here. They're not much to see there. It just looks like a bunch of a CSV file, essentially. And if there were trust, there would also be a trust statement here to show all the activity in the client's trust account. So that's what the email looks like. Now let's see what happens when we go to pay it.
And I would imagine, Gary, that heads off a lot of questions, right? By having all those attachments, having if the client has questions, they can kind of self-serve, see what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the whole idea. Transparency, clarity, all of those things build trust in the client relationship. So now your client has just opened up the pay link, and they get a link just like they're used to seeing on online systems. It's smart. It knows the amount that's due, gives the client the option to pay a lesser amount. You don't have to include that if you don't want. It says, oh, okay, we're going to pay by credit card or ACH, or I don't want to pay electronically. I'm going to send you a check. Then we can tell them they can designate where they want the receipt to go. We can say this is, I'm going to call this Judy, put in the amount here. We have a bunch of test accounts over here. We can copy in here. And just like that, it's paid. Okay, so the client now has paid, and they, in just a moment, will receive a receipt. Well, in just a moment, they will. What happens next is the receipt is sent to the client, and a notification is sent back to the law firm that invoice has been paid. And I'll come back to this to show you what those look like, but they look like standard receipts. So one of the other features we have is, really pushing for people to use email as much as possible to deliver invoices because of the efficiencies of that. Mm-hmm. Many law firms still send most of their invoices out on paper, which is very expensive to do when you count up all the staff time and everything that's included like that. So we really want to encourage people to do this by email. That does not have to require electronic payment. You can do it with or without in the LeanLaw system. But then once those emails go out, we have a lot of demand for people to say, hey, what happened with those invoices that I sent? So, okay. So we have an email tracking system here. So for example, this invoice for the floral company, we show, okay, there was an invoice with the recipient. Oh, it's been opened the other day. So at least we know that it was opened. Oh, this one was clicked. And somewhere Well, we don't have any that have been paid, so I've got some work to do on this side. So let's say we want to mark this one and say, oh, well, that one, then we need to send a reminder.
Yes.
And we just send a reminder. So, the QuickBooks payment system has a nice reminder system like this. And, ours has many of those features, and it will soon have automated reminders as well.
Yeah,
So,
I really like this, Gary, because if you are going to pick up the phone and call, if you've only sent it out once, probably makes sense to send a reminder. But then if they've opened it a couple times but still haven't paid it, then maybe at that point, you could have some rules in place where, hey, maybe pick up the phone call if they've
yeah,
opened it twice, and then if they say, well, I haven't got it, you can say, well, okay, maybe we got the wrong email. It looks like someone got it. Maybe we're sending it to the wrong place. At the client's business, and kind of fix a clerical error or whatever the case may be. But sounds like this really helps to stay on top of receiving payments.
exactly. Well, and it can help you understand, if you are doing this on regular cadence, if somebody's not paying your bill because they're not happy, then you get it's like, oh, well, better to know that sooner rather than later. So, it again, it's that process of building trust that we want to address in here. So that's that. Let's see what's come to our inbox. Okay, yes, now we've got everything that has come into our inbox. So number one is Gravity Legal is telling the law firm that there's a payment method's been stored. So that client now has a stored payment method for future payments. Sometimes you set up your billing so that you can draw automatically at a certain point after the invoice has been sent, and particularly draw from trust account. So, this is helpful to know. Okay, now that method is in place for that client. Now here's the law firm's receipt. And very similar, here is the client's receipt for that payment. And then remember that reminder we sent to the floral company. They got something that looks like this. And this reminder is also configurable. So you can, add a personal note or something if you want to do that. In this case, there is an invoice balance and a pay balance. And since we didn't show the trust activity report, here's what that looks like. So this now has a record of everything that's happened in the client's trust account. That's important for, again, alignment with the client, but also for bar compliance.
Yeah, I really
So
like the debit credit view and what's going on with the accounting, because that's something just to be transparent with it, that QuickBooks can't make it that pretty. So was super excited when we were talking about this, and appreciate you showing that, because heads off those questions, and like you said, continues to build that trust. So
exactly. So that is kind of that core workflow, the timekeeping, invoicing, and payment. So what else?
let's talk a little bit about how does LeanLaw take advantage of QuickBooks's QuickBooks Online accounting capabilities.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really kind of part of our magic, is that we decided early on that we were not going to be able to recreate an accounting system like QuickBooks, and so we should take advantage of everything that QuickBooks does to be the best accounting system for small businesses in the world. And so that was QuickBooks Online was a fairly young product when we started. And what was really exciting then is you had a really robust open API in your product, which meant there are lots of ways for us to connect directly with QuickBooks, and it uses webhooks so that can be a two-way sync and in real time. So essentially, these products for the first time could work seamlessly together. Now that's more standard at this point, but that is really what drew us to QuickBooks. And just to give you an idea, let me go to our settings for just a second, and we'll look at the QuickBooks integration page. So there's a whole bunch of things that we do with QuickBooks on this page. And this is just kind of the beginning. So it creates a default service for where things go. It allows us to edit expense settings, designate an operating account. There's other section that allows us to designate a trust account. It lets us decide whether to do client or matter-based accounting in QuickBooks, and whether to create. So when we create a client and matter in LeanLaw, that automatically creates a client and matter in QuickBooks, which we'll talk about later. It can automatically create a client and matter in other programs like Salesforce and HubSpot, so that we have this. So that all of that kind of basic work flows through. We can talk about how things are, what payment methods are allowed, class tracking if you're using that, where to send invoices. So we just have kind of thought of every way that's valuable for our clients to be for our product to be tied into QuickBooks, and have created that in here. So that's kind of the the high level here. But we really, we rely on QuickBooks Online to be that chart of accounts and general ledger for all of our law firms. And it's the source of truth for all of our reports with the information that comes directly from QuickBooks Online. It's not like we are creating a, second set of books that have to be aligned with QuickBooks. The books in QuickBooks are the books. That's the source of truth. And we think that is very powerful and something that is a best practice for law firms. One of the things we love about QuickBooks, which, the all-in-one products that we see in the law space don't have the girth to create, are things like this. So just connecting your bank and getting the automatic reconciliation of those bank statements is something we're really excited about with QuickBooks. So there's 5,000 banks that are going to connect automatically with QuickBooks Online. That's a power that we want to have associated with our software. So then earlier I had talked about another huge advantage with QuickBooks Online is being able to find the people you need to help with your accounting and billing. So there are over 200,000 QuickBooks Pro advisors who are trained and certified to use QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online. And among those are legal experts who also know LeanLaw. So we've created a program which is solely available to QuickBooks Pro advisors to become what we call a LeanLaw accounting pro, meaning that they are experts in QuickBooks as well as LeanLaw. Some of those people do really well with smaller law firms, and we've highlighted a few on the page here who are experts with mid-sized firms. So, it's a great relief for the law firm office manager, a lot of whom have HR backgrounds and not necessarily finance backgrounds. They go, okay, who's going to run this new billing system for me? Or who do I go to if I need help running this billing system? And you've got this kind of resource. And because QuickBooks Online is in the cloud and available everywhere, you don't have to find somebody in town to do that. You can hire somebody like these folks who can work with firms all over the country, can and do work with firms all over the country.
Yeah, and I think we've all bought something where the value of it was diminished when you didn't get quite the support you needed. I was, again, the more I learn, the more excited I am to have 200,000 accountants who can, be hopefully in very close proximity to you and give you that knowledge and expertise, and not have to go out and learn a new system. They already know the law space. They already know QuickBooks and LeanLaw and different softwares that are commonly used in the industry. It really helps make it plug and play. So
Yeah, that's been a huge advantage for us. These folks work really hard with our clients to, help them do some very sophisticated things with their billing. I mean, we have one firm that sends out almost $1 million a month in invoices, and they have and it is 100% electronic, and it is all done with what they call live trust, so that the trust account is automatically replenished and the invoice paid as soon as the client authorizes that payment. So the accounting's fully automated, the payments are fully electronic and fully automated, the invoicing is fully automated. So it's there's some very sophisticated work going on in some of these firms.
we can talk about it specifically. When it comes to trust accounting, and that's a workflow that's fairly unique, but very critical to law firms. And like you said, building up that trust and that transparency with clients. How does QuickBooks Online, Advanced, and LeanLaw kind of partner together to handle this workflow?
Right, right. So we love this one. So we have this plus button in the billing section, and it's available elsewhere in the product. And let's say the first thing you want to do is just collect a retainer from a client. So if you've been asked to do that, you just go and do a trust request. You can plug in the client, like those guys. We'll say it's a $5,000 retainer. It just has a deposit memo, which will show up in QuickBooks, and a note that you can customize. All right. So essentially what that does is simply sends the money to the trust account. It sends a trust request to the client, and the client will then pay as they did with the bill that we saw, and then that money flows directly into QuickBooks, where it's going to show in your chart of accounts. So if we go down to our trust account, and all of these trust accounts are liability accounts, they're created automatically in QuickBooks. And so we can just look at the trust register. When that payment is made by the client, it's just going to appear in the trust register here automatically. So now you've automatically done the trust accounting related to that payment.
Excellent.
So that's one way to do it. Now let's go look at our managing our invoices and see if we've got one that's got a trust balance. Here we go. Hopefully we can now, we're going to mark that one. Let's see. Yeah, and now we're going to pay from trust. It shows the amount of the invoice again, and we pay it. So now that one says it was successfully processed. That was Greg Johnson. So now if we go into QuickBooks, and we're going to go back to the chart of accounts and search for Mr. Johnson. Going to look at his register. You can see that amount that we had just requested has automatically been moved into the trust register and paid. It reduced the ending balance in the trust account. and all of the accounting has been done automatically for that.
Wow. Very nice.
Yeah. So, we've had many people say how much they appreciate the saved work on the trust accounting, and just it's what we typically, well, actually one client described what they want on trust accounting is idiot-proof trust accounting, because it's a really sensitive workflow for law firm, because law firms hold money for their clients in what amounts to, they're essentially trustees, and the money in, money out, and its source have to be tracked exactly, or the law firm can get in trouble with their bar association or legal society, as well as with the client. So, that's why they want something they don't have to just worry over every detail, because it's very complicated to get that trust accounting right.
Yeah, and like I said, just thinking again about those themes of automation, efficiency, having one system update the other and vice versa. Super exciting. Having all the accounting done, not having to go in and do manual adjustments to the accounting. Really exciting what you've been able to do, Gary, you and the team over at LeanLaw.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we think this is something we do very well.
Definitely.
Awesome.
That's another important part of a law firm, especially mid-sized law firms, having the need to review and stay up to date with different key reports. So how does QuickBooks Online and LeanLaw help out from a reporting perspective?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, for most law firms, their reporting is kind of basic in some ways, because what they're focusing on is the basics of the business, which is primarily get the bills out and get them paid. And that requires reports like work in progress, billed and collected, and some variations on these. So, I'll show you what, QuickBooks has a really nice WIP billed and collected report that a lot of our clients use. Let me show you what's on the LeanLaw side of the reporting to start. And we divide our reports. We have standard reports, which you see on this page. Then we have recently created advanced reports for some of the things that need a little tweaking on an individual basis, and then custom reports. So let's talk about these standard reports. So more or less everything that you see on this page is about either work in progress, what's billed and what's collected, and we do it, and how you slice and dice those things. So if we want to see WIP billed and collected by client and matter, we just open up this report. And this is, and in a mid-sized firm, these can get pretty complicated. So it's nice to have that here. And another thing, just a couple of things to keep your eyes on regarding these reports. One is, historically, and I think still in a lot of cases, true in my law firm, that the reports are static. So they're generated once a month, they're turned into a PDF, and that's where they sit. They're also a report, since it's static, is not going to allow you to drill in like you can here and just see, okay, whose WIP is that? But here we've got, this is both available in real time and with that drill down capability in every field. And so that's one report like that. You can get the same thing by user, but with all users. You can get it by who's the responsible attorney, when it's like, okay, I gotta look at my bills and see which ones need to go out, which ones have collection issues, sometimes by practice area. You also can get a trust report, so you can see everything that's happening in your trust account in real time. Again, all of this data comes from QuickBooks. So QuickBooks is the source of truth for this, but this gives you that live report and ability to look at all of this in real time. And also to look at, checks and deposits, everything related to that. So that's a high level overview of our standard reports. The second, let's go over to QuickBooks here for a second to look at the QuickBooks reports, because from a basic business standpoint, nobody does these reports better than QuickBooks Online. So if you need a balance sheet, for example, or a profit and loss, let's look at the profit and loss. That's automatically generated by QuickBooks. Okay, this is the current year to date. But if I wanted to see last year, I can just do that. And let's do it by month. We can just run that report. And you've got a month by month P&L for the prior year right out of the box. And so if we go back to the report list, so those sort of core business reports, profit loss, balance sheet, cash flow, QuickBooks does a great job with those. And then LeanLaw supplements that with the more esoteric and specialized stuff that you need for law firms. So just quickly, that there are law firms, I meant to say that all of those QuickBooks reports are also live and dynamic, just like the ones in LeanLaw. So the data is always available to you there. Just very quickly on advanced reports. So if you wanted full expense reports, or let's say invoice details, let's click on that one. These reports offer more visualization and allow you to also see detail. This is customizable, how you set this up, so you can have a look like that for those sorts of things. Then we have custom reports. Every law firm, as I said, if there are 4 ways to do things, law firm's going to want a 5th choice. So that's what custom reports are for. So we've got a few examples here. If we wanted to look at our fixed fees, we can set that up so that we've got the practice area look, the invoiced amount. Here's a pivot table with the people and the time of the fixed fees. That is highly configurable and based on a third-party partner that we use to create those. So there's a lot of power in here to slice and dice the data in different ways, and also the ability to bring in outside data sets that aren't strictly QuickBooks or LeanLaw.
Earlier, Gary, you had mentioned a little bit about compensation and why that's important to firms. Can we maybe see how we can work with that in this system?
Yeah, so compensation is one of those key business things, obviously. And as I said, I'm a big fan of production-based compensation. And so a lot of firms do that in some form or another. So you keep track of who originated a matter, who is the responsible attorney in a matter, who the working attorney is. And so in our standard reports, we actually have a compensation report, which allows you to set like sharing percentages. So the working attorney gets 80% or 90% of what they work, plus they might get if they originate a certain amount, they get a percentage for that. And then you set those in the settings, and then those show up here as so okay, so for this month, all these attorneys, Fred worked $11,950. So his share of that is this. He gets another $1,200 in origination. There was no referral on this one, or the firm does not have a referral percentage. So, okay, he's owed almost $12,000 this month. He may have an offset for certain expenses on his matter. That's all laid out here. So this is the accounting of the compensation. In order for that to get into QuickBooks, you use what's called a distribution. And so we can show specific distributions here. Let's say, okay, what was the distribution in Q1, or let's go back and do Q3 2023. Okay, so now we know exactly what was distributed to each person in this total column here based on those percentages that the firm has. So, this covers, kind of that 80% of the compensation systems that people have, so I'm guessing on that percentage, but it's kind of the ones we hear about most often. If you have a more complex compensation system, it's easy to take this information and then just download it into a spreadsheet and do whatever additional math you need to do for a firm share or for other things that we don't have out of the box. But we think this is a pretty powerful way to do production-based compensation, and it's one of the things people talk about most with us.